Because Israel's battle against terror that started on October 7th continues to intensify with each passing minute. The IDF is currently operating in the heart of Gaza City, pounding every terror den. Israel has refused calls for ceasefire and has warned those siding with Hamas. And during this operation in northern Gaza, several tunnels and other terror infra has also come to light. But the fight is not just in the heart of Gaza, but a multi-front war. The IDF has also struck Hezbollah's infrastructure in Lebanon. A number of Hezbollah targets in Lebanese territory in response to firing. Israel has made it clear that there is no possibility of a ceasefire at this point of war. To talk more about this, let's bring in Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, a renowned Israeli attorney who's leading this fight to isolate Hamas globally. Before we go to Ms. Leitner, listen to what the IDF has said.
We're continuing with our activities in the north of Gaza primarily. We're discovering tunnels, the shafts that are going into the tunnel system. We're dealing with that. It's a slow process, and we're doing it surely. No, absolutely not. Right now, there is no ceasefire. We are opening up humanitarian windows.
We have a special guest on India Upfront, Nitsana Leitner, joining us. Ms. Leitner, thank you for speaking to Times Now. You know, we are talking at a time when there is a propaganda war going on, and this is in the backdrop of what's happening in Gaza. IDF has launched Operation Iron Swords. IDF troops are on the ground, taking out Hamas terror infrastructure, but a lot has been said and written about it. I want, with your help, to decode this and to put this in the right context. Now, your organization, the Shurat HaDin, aims to bring forth lawsuits against Hamas. It aims to initiate legal proceedings against them and expose them using legal means. Now, Ms. Leitner, tell us more about the blueprint that you have in mind.
Well, we all know that the one that funded Hamas and supported it was Qatar, was Iran. Our organization has been suing and bringing lawsuits against state-sponsored terrorism, and this is what we intend to do now. We are going to bring a lawsuit against the Qatari institutes that funded the entire war machine. Hamas gave $30 million a month to Qatar, gave $30 million a month to Hamas in cash, in oil worth, in taxes. Qatar, with his Qatari Foundation, funding all the charities in Gaza, which are embedded with Hamas. Qatar also hosts the leaders of Hamas in its country. Qatar is the one to blame in the whole war here, and she needs to pay. We are gathering victims that were killed during the war, and on their behalf, we're going to sue Qatar. In addition, we're going to sue Iran. Iran is funding Hamas. Iran sends weapons to Hamas. Iran is the one that trains the Hamas terrorists, either in its territories or in Gaza or in Lebanon, and it's to blame as well, and we are going to sue them as well. And if I can go forward, we have other institutes that we know funded Hamas, and we are going to sue them as well. You have to understand that Hamas was able to create a monster, to create a whole city underground, to manufacture tons of missiles and rockets, to import a lot of weapons that they utilized against Israel in October 7th in a tremendous massacre that haven't seen since the Holocaust. They could not have done it without money, without ton of money that made its way in this way or another to the Gaza Strip. And now all those who funded this operation will pay.
Now, Ms. Leitner, we'll come to the October 7 attack by Hamas, in just a bit. But there's another question that I want to slip in very quickly. Now, speaking legally, there are those who are on the Palestinian side of the divide on this, and they claim that Israel's attack, the counter-strike by IDF in Gaza, which have resulted in more than 12,000 casualties, amount to a war crime and is against the principles of the Geneva Convention. How are you seeing this claim?
We have to remember who started this whole war. That was Hamas savages that went into Israel and massacred 1,400 people. They murdered them, they burned them alive, they dismembered them, they beheaded them, they raped the women, they acted like subhuman animals. And then they kidnapped 200 citizens, not soldiers, citizens, into the Gaza Strip. Now, Israel had to defend itself, and Israel swore to eliminate Hamas because Hamas swore to destroy the state of Israel. Hamas was almost successful in its doing unless the IDF went and blocked them. So now Israel is in a war against a terror organization that wants to destroy, that wants to massacre its people. The way to do it is to go and kill them in Gaza. The problem is that Hamas surrounds himself with civilians. He used women, children, elderly as human shields. Now, Israel cannot back off just because Hamas surrounds himself with human shields, which is a violation of the international law. It's a violation of the Geneva Convention. What Israel does, and this is its obligation according to law, is to warn the civilians to vacate the area. The IDF throw leaflets towards Gaza and tell them to go away from the northern part of it to the southern part of it. He calls people. The IDF make phone calls to the residents in Gaza, warn them to vacate the area. And indeed, you can see that 1.7 million people from the northern part of the Gaza Strip made all its way, walked, and left the area towards the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Now, the IDF is striking, and is striking back. And it's striking very, very bad because Hamas used all the houses, all the residential areas, kindergartens, schools, hospitals as their headquarters, as a place to manufacture weapons, as a place to shoot missiles and to host launchers.
Essentially, what you're saying is that Hamas is using civilian infrastructure as a shield and is using civilians, innocent Gazans, as cannon fodder. Now let's, deep dive into what really Hamas is, because, there's also, as I'm sure you're aware, this narrative that Hamas is not a terror organization. Now I have, facts laid out here. I also have the ideology, the vision document, as it is called, of Hamas. Now, you would remember that this is an elected entity that we are talking about, and that it has a diplomatic wing. Hamas has a political wing. It has its own aid networks, also participates in terror activity. So is it a state actor, or would you call Hamas or describe it as a non-state actor?
Can you call Hamas an entity that came and killed children, women, burned babies in an oven, put them alive in ovens, did rape so sadistically that they broke the bones of the women, then they went and shot them and kidnapped civilians? Is it a legitimate organization? Is it an entity that promotes any cause but destruction of the Jewish people? The mistake that the world is making by defining Hamas as a legitimate organization that represents the Palestinian people is a fatal mistake, because the Hamas goal is not to represent the Palestinian people. Indeed, they don't care about the Palestinian people. They let them get killed on the streets. They don't let them into the tunnels. They say that the responsibility, Ismail Haniyeh, in one of the interviews, when he was asked, why don't you let the population enter the bunkers, enter the tunnels that you dig to safeguard them, he said, it's not my job. It's not the Hamas job. It's the UN job to take care of the Palestinians. Hamas caused a destruction of the Gaza Strip, a place where there are 2 million residents, Palestinians living in, with no care at all, just to accomplish its private goal to destroy the Jewish state. So now, to come and say that Hamas represents the Palestinian people. Hamas is a legitimate organization, is such a mistake that doesn't cause harm to the state of Israel as much as it causes harm to the Palestinian people themselves.
Now, Ms. Leitner, you know, because we're talking about the United Nations, there was a comment made by the UN chief, something that he retracted and said that I didn't mean to actually say what he said, because he had said that originally he had said that the attack by Hamas did not happen in vacuum. Now, because you want to pursue a legal case, you will need to collect evidence. Are you hopeful that the evidence that you collect and present would be then worked upon by the UNSC? Do you have any hope that the UN can ban Hamas?
I don't understand why the manager of the UN, secretary of the UN, said that it was not done in a vacuum. But what vacuum? What vacuum? Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2006. Israel allowed the people in Gaza to select their own government. The people in Gaza, in a vast majority, voted for Hamas. Hamas now is the government in Gaza. That's all. This is the story. Now, Hamas could have done one of the two things, either to build the Gaza Strip and turn it into a beautiful place. It has a beach. It has good land. It could have made the Gaza Strip an industry. Instead, he decided to destroy it, to eliminate it, to crush it, to ruin it, to burn it, just to promote its goals. This is why it was not a matter of being in a vacuum. Israel withdrew from Gaza. It was up to the Palestinians, it was up to the Hamas leadership to take the Gaza Strip to where it wanted. They decided calmly, logically, intentionally to go and open a war against Israel, thinking that they can, for the first time, maybe the best opportunity, to eliminate the Jewish state. Now, the UN always was against Israel. The UN has a history that from the day that they approved the creation of the state of Israel, constantly voting against it, constantly blaming it for harming its neighbors, either it's Egypt, Jordan, and now the Palestinians.
Ms. Leitner, in fact, I was about to ask you this question, and because we are talking about it now, are you concerned in particular by the stance adopted by the United Nations, even after the massacre by Hamas on October 7th?
Look, if it was up to the General Assembly, I would very, very worry. But since it's only the Security Council of the UN, where we have US to block, and Britain and Germany to block any vote against Israel and have our back, I less worry. But I rest assured, if it was up to the nations that are members in the General Assembly, Israel would have been lost many, many days ago. I don't think they would let Israel even one more day to finish the work. And Israel has to finish the job. Israel has to eliminate Hamas. And I want to remind you, it's not that Hamas came and surrounded. It's not that Hamas came with white flags and told Israel, okay, I'm willing to give up my arms. I'm not going to do any harm to you anymore. It's not.
That's right.
Hamas continues shooting rockets into Israel. Hamas continues shooting RPGs and fight the IDF troops in the Gaza Strip. Hamas swore to fight this war until the last Palestinians. And they are not going to end.
Right.
And they are not coming back and giving us our hostages. They continue the war. They have plans to continue eliminate Israel, and this is why Israel must continue this war and finish.
Now, Ms. Leitner, let me ask you this. It's a direct question. I have in my mind no doubts about how depraved an organization Islamist Hamas is. But now that you are ready to pursue a legal case, do you have testimonies from people who are part of the Gaza Strip, by which I mean the Gazans? Wouldn't that bolster your case? Would you like to share some of it with us?
I'll tell you, look, the IDF created a 45 minutes long video that collects the atrocities that Hamas committed in Gaza. Horrible pictures that whoever watched this video gets up, blessed and cried and cannot stop. And the memories remain in his brain for the rest of his life. I did not watch this video. Many Israelis prefer not to watch this video, but whoever does understand how savage and animals the Hamas are. I can give you just an example from what they say. Seen in this video, the Hamas entered a family house in Gaza, and they took the two parents and the two children, tied their hands and put them in front of each other. And then they tortured the parents in front of the children. They took out the eye of the father, they beat the mother, they cut their organs, and then they did all these things in front of the children. And then they burned the children and the parents. These are not human beings. This should, for the sake of humanity, should be eliminated from the face of the earth. Not for the Jews, for the rest of the world.
After what you've described, I don't know what to say, but in the end, Ms. Leitner, before we let you go, I want to ask you about the 240-odd people who are still held hostage at different locations by Hamas. This is clearly a crime against humanity. How are you seeing this? Do you have anything in particular that will make your case compelling?
Look, we have Israel has 200 of its citizens kidnapped in Gaza. This is a violation of the international law. You cannot kidnap civilians. It's not a war that you have prisoners of war. These are civilians, not soldiers. And this is why it's a violation of the Geneva Convention. Among these civilians are citizens from all countries, including from Mumbai. And the duty of the world is to put pressure on Hamas to release the hostages. There is no legal way to keep these hostages in Gaza. The Red Cross, if we're going back to the UN, the Red Cross, which is an international organization, keep silent. They don't come and visit the hostages. They don't gather any information about them. Right. We don't even know how many of them are there. And if we talk about other organizations, women organizations, the Me Too movement, none of them care what happened to the women, to the girls, to the elderly that are being kept hostage. And you know the goal of Hamas was to rape. They got a command to rape the women. As one of the detainees, the terrorist that was arrested by Israel, said, we got a command to dirty the women, to rape them, which is against Islam, but they didn't care. So the obligations stand upon the world is to do anything they can to pressure Hamas, to pressure Qatar, to pressure Egypt, to pressure Jordan, to pressure Iran, to press Hamas to release the hostages.
And at the very least, the world must come together to call out the savagery by Hamas and not try and legitimize this attempt to whitewash Islamist terror by the so-called ecosystem around the world. Ms. Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, thank you for speaking to Times Now. We wish you all the best. More power to you as you embark on this journey to expose Hamas and Hamas apologists.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.